The funeral was extravagant. Sleek black Maseratis lined the street of the wealthy Monte Carlo district. Expensive designer wear and dark sunglasses filled the chapel. At the front stood him, the grieving husband. A picture of sorrow in his tailored black suit. Crocodile tears streaking his face. And right beside him, his billionaire mistress clutching his arm like a prize. They shared secret smiles behind bowed heads. He thought he'd won. His wife gone, his fortune secure, and his new life already in motion. But just as the priest said, "May she rest in peace," the chapel doors swung open with a thunderous bang. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His confident smile faltered. Cameras turned. Whispers grew into stunned silence. He came to bury his wife and flaunt his new lover. But what happened next shook everyone to their core. This is the story of greed, betrayal, and a funeral no one in the French Riviera would ever forget. Broken Heart, the Golden Cage. The world thought they were perfect. Every magazine photo, every yacht party painted the same picture. Alexander and Serafina Dubois, the golden couple of Monaco. He was the self-made tech magnate with a charming smile and a smooth voice. She was the beautiful patron of the arts with a heart for people and the money to back it up. They were the couple everyone envied. Behind the closed doors of their Seaview villa, everyone would have been shocked to see the truth. It was a Tuesday morning, bright and clean after a light mist. Serafina stood in the kitchen, humming softly while slicing fresh figs for breakfast. Alexander walked in, sharp in his tailored charcoal gray Brioni suit, scrolling through his phone without a glance her way. "Morning," she said gently, looking up with a hopeful smile. He didn't respond. Just poured coffee into a cup, black, 2 sugars, the way she used to make it for him. Serafina tried again. "I thought maybe we could have breakfast together today. You've been working so hard." Alexander slammed the cup down, cutting her off. "Serafina, please. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I don't have time for small talk." She whispered, "It's been weeks since we've had a meal together." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're counting now? That's cute." "I'm not counting. I just miss you." That finally got him to look up. His eyes, once warm, now carried nothing but irritation. "Miss me, Serafina? I live here. I'm just busy building something real, not playing charity games with struggling artists." Serafina's lips parted slightly. "Those artists are building beauty. Alexander, I'm trying to help." "Yeah. Well, maybe you should focus on your own marriage first," he said coldly, straightening his tie. "Because it feels like the only charity case around here is me." He walked out before she could respond, leaving the smell of his cologne and the sound of her breaking heart behind. A week later, Alexander attended a high-end investor dinner on a private yacht. That's where he met Isabelle Moreau. She arrived in a crimson gown that looked like it cost a fortune. Her presence turned heads. When she extended her hand to Alexander, her eyes didn't just meet his, they evaluated him. "So, you're Alexander Dubois? The man turning tech startups into gold." "Guilty. And you must be the infamous Isabelle Moreau. I've read about your acquisitions. I prefer to call them rescues." They talked for hours. When the dinner ended, Isabelle leaned in and whispered, "Call me. I think we could build something powerful." And from that night, she was in his head. Isabelle wasn't just rich, she was strategic. "You're too smart to be living off your wife's gallery connections," she told him. "You could be so much more if you weren't tied down. Serafina has money and connections. I can't just walk away." Isabelle leaned close, whispering, "You don't need to walk away. Sometimes life gives you opportunities." He looked at her, confused at first. Then he understood. And he didn't stop her. Waterwave a fatal drive. One night, Alexander came home unusually cheerful. He poured Bordeaux, kissed Serafina's forehead for the first time in months, and said, "I've been thinking, maybe we should update our insurance policies. You know, just to be responsible. You drive a lot, after all." Later that night, as he showered, his phone buzzed. The message was from Isabel Moreau. Her hands shook as she read it. "Once she's gone, you're free. We'll build an empire together." Serafina turned, pale and shaking. "Who's Isabel? You're planning something. You think too much, Serafina. That's your problem." He walked away, leaving her trembling. The rain fell in slow, heavy sheets that night. Serafina's assistant, Margot, was waiting by the car. "Mrs. Dubois, I already fueled the car," Margot said. "You sure you want to drive in this weather?" Serafina hesitated. She forced a smile. "Actually, Margot, why don't you take my car tonight? I'll follow in the company vehicle. Make sure the event arrangements are set." Margot nodded, confused, but obedient. They switched keys. Serafina watched as Margot climbed into her sleek black Mercedes, the one Alexander had personally serviced that week. Her gut twisted. As Margot drove off, Serafina followed. The roads were nearly empty. Wind howled across the coastal highway. Lightning cracked the sky. Then, a loud pop echoed. Margot's car swerved violently. The back tires screeched on the wet asphalt. The car hit the guardrail, burst through the barrier, and plunged off the cliffside road into the black Mediterranean waves below. Serafina screamed Margot's name, slammed her brakes, and leapt out. She ran to the edge and saw the faint glow of headlights flickering underwater. Without a second thought, she plunged into the cold sea, fighting the current until she reached the sinking car and pulled the unconscious Margot out. By morning, the news broke: Serafina Dubois presumed dead after tragic car accident off the coast of Monte Carlo. The ghost in the chapel. 2 weeks later, the funeral was held. Alexander stood at the front, a vision of grief. He gave a moving speech about love and loss. "Serafina was my everything," he said, hand on his chest. Isabel stood a few steps away, hiding her smirk. No one noticed the woman standing in the back of the chapel, face covered with a wide hat and sunglasses. It was Serafina, unrecognizable to anyone there. She watched her husband cry fake tears over a coffin that held nothing. When the priest said, "May she rest in peace," Serafina turned and walked out. "He thinks I'm dead," she whispered to herself in the rain. The day of the memorial, the church glowed with candlelight and white lilies. Alexander stood at the front. Beside him, Isabel played her part perfectly, her hand resting gently on his arm. Alexander finished his eulogy and stepped down, returning to his seat beside Isabel. She leaned in close, whispering something that made him smile faintly. The priest raised his hands for the final prayer. "Let us now commend our sister, Serafina Dubois, into eternal rest. May she rest in peace." And then, the heavy doors at the back of the chapel burst open with a thunderous bang. Every head turned at once. The music stopped. Rain blew in from the open doorway. A tall figure stood framed by the light from outside, soaked from the storm. The woman stepped forward slowly. The whispers started like ripples. "Oh my God! Is that? No, it can't be." Alexander's head snapped up, his body went rigid, his mouth falling open. Isabel's hand slipped off his arm, her eyes widened in horror. Serafina Dubois stood alive in the doorway of her own funeral. Her voice was steady, low, cutting through the silence. "Sorry I'm late." Alexander's face drained of color. Serafina took another step closer. "You buried me without a body. You thought the Mediterranean would keep your secret." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small silver recorder. "Oh, I do know what I'm saying. And so will everyone else." She clicked it on. Alexander's own voice filled the chapel, crisp and undeniable. once she's gone, we're free. Don't worry, baby. No one will suspect a thing. From the back of the church, Inspector Moreau stepped forward, holding up his badge. I don't think so, Mr. Dubois. We've been watching you for months. And then with one final step into the aisle, Serafina lifted her chin and said softly, "Miss me?" The room erupted into chaos. The silver recording device, small and unassuming, had dropped a bomb into the gilded silence of the chapel. Alexander's voice, cold and clinical, hung in the air, "Once she's gone, we're free. Don't worry, baby. No one will suspect a thing." The sound was followed by a deafening, unified gasp from the entire congregation. Alexander Dubois did not just look shocked, he looked like a man whose soul had been flash-frozen. His jaw was slack, his meticulously planned facade of grief shattering into 1,000 pieces. He pointed a trembling finger at Serafina. "It's fake. It's doctored," he shrieked, his smooth, media-trained voice replaced by a panicked, high-pitched squawk. "She's trying to ruin me. I loved her. This is the act of a madwoman." Serafina held the recorder, her hand rock-steady despite the chaos. Her eyes, bruised but fiercely alive, never left his. "You're right, Alexander," she said, her voice carrying an icy calm that sliced through his hysteria. "I am mad. Mad that I ever loved you." She turned slightly, addressing the crowd, the cameras, the politicians, the rivals, and the reporters. "That message was sent to Isabel Moreau," she gestured to the billionaire mistress, who recoiled as if struck, minutes after he left our house that night. "The night he adjusted the brakes on my car. The car my assistant, Margot, was driving when she plunged into the sea." A new wave of gasps. People began to shout. The sound of camera shutters was now a frantic machine gun rattle. Inspector Moreau, who had been standing silently in the back, took 2 decisive steps forward, his uniform cutting through the crowd. He wasn't looking at Serafina. He was looking straight at Alexander and Isabel. "The recording is verified," the inspector announced, his voice booming over the noise. "We have the original text message records, the insurance policy updates, and the testimony of Ms. Margot Roussel, who is alive and safe. Furthermore, the mechanics at the Monte Carlo garage have confirmed Mr. Dubois ordered a specific, untraceable, adjustment to the brake lines." Isabel, realizing the game was over, made a move for the side door. She was immediately intercepted by 2 plainclothes officers. "This is ridiculous. You have no proof," she snarled, dropping her demure act completely. "Alexander, tell them this is a frame-up." Alexander looked at Isabel, then back at Serafina, his eyes wide with desperate calculation. He saw the cold, righteous certainty in his wife's face. He saw the cameras recording every drop of his humiliation. He saw his empire dissolving into a storm of bad press and police sirens. He tried to run. He bolted from the altar toward the vestry door. "Alexander Dubois!" Inspector Moreau shouted. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud." The chaos outside the chapel was a feeding frenzy. Reporters swarmed Serafina, shouting questions about her survival, the faked death, and the recordings. She was the story of the decade, the woman who crashed her own funeral to expose her husband. But Serafina was prepared. Detective Inspector Moreau's team quickly formed a protective barrier, escorting her into a waiting, unmarked car. She didn't grant interviews, her appearance in the chapel had been her statement. The evidence Serafina provided, the recorded confession, the text messages from Alexander to Isabel, and the verified garage work orders proving the brake sabotage, made the case against Alexander Dubois and Isabel Moreau airtight. Alexander Dubois was formally charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and aggravated insurance fraud. His plea of momentary insanity and attempts to shift blame onto Isabel were quickly dismissed. Isabel Moreau was charged with conspiracy and fraud. Investigators immediately began looking into her past acquisitions, suspecting this was not the first time she had used criminal means to eliminate a business rival or gain a financial advantage. Margot Roussel, Serafina's assistant who survived the crash, provided a calm, detailed account of the car's sudden malfunction on the coastal highway, solidifying the prosecution's timeline. The trial, held a few months later in Monaco, became a global spectacle. Alexander, pale and gaunt, watched his empire crumble from the defense table. His vast fortune was frozen, much of it slated for restitution and legal fees. Isabelle showed no remorse, maintaining a cold defiance until the end. Both were convicted and received long sentences, ensuring they would spend decades, perhaps the rest of their lives, behind bars. With the legal battle concluded, Serafina focused on healing and rebuilding. She decided to completely step away from the glare of Monaco's elite society. The villa, she sold the Seaview Villa, which held too many dark memories, and established her new primary residence in a quiet, artistic town in Provence. Margot's recovery, Serafina funded Margot's full physical and psychological recovery. They remained close, a bond forged in shared trauma and ultimate survival. Margot, inspired by Serafina's strength, decided to pursue a degree in investigative journalism. The foundation, Serafina returned to her charity work, but with a renewed focus. She established the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to helping women and children who are victims of financial and emotional abuse by powerful partners. She used the story of her own survival, and the millions recovered from the insurance and fraud cases, to give others a path to safety and independence. Her scars became symbols of resilience, not weakness. Serafina no longer sought the spotlight, but she embraced her voice. She wrote a widely successful memoir, not about revenge, but about the slow, silent poison of betrayal and the fierce power of self-preservation. She spoke only when it mattered, using her platform to shine a light into the dark corners of domestic abuse and corporate deceit. She finally found the peace Alexander thought he had stolen from her. She lived not just as a survivor, but as a thriving, powerful woman in charge of her own destiny, a permanent reminder to the world that sometimes, the only way to truly live is to crash your own funeral. Stripped of his tailored suits and his charming facade, Alexander Dubois rapidly deteriorated in prison. The tech magnate, who had once commanded rooms full of investors, was reduced to inmate number, his status a source of bitter mockery among the guards and other prisoners. His cell became a lonely echo chamber for his self-pity and rage. He received no visits from his former circle, his friends and family, those who weren't implicated in his schemes, had quietly severed all ties to protect their own reputations. He tried several times to launch appeals, convinced he could charm his way out, but his arrogance only solidified the authorities' disdain. He was forced to work in the prison's industrial laundry, his hands, once used to signing multi-million euro deals, now calloused and raw from handling harsh chemicals. His final fate was to become utterly irrelevant, a forgotten headline, staring at a calendar that stretched endlessly, realizing too late that the true fortune he had lost was the simple, honest life he had tried to trade for an empire built on murder. Ice Cube Isabelle Moreau, The Icy Fall. Isabelle Moreau, however, did not break. She was cold, calculating, and immediately sought out the best means of survival within the prison structure. She quickly learned the system, using her sharp intellect to manage the illegal prison economy, trading favors and information with an icy efficiency. Her disdain for Alexander, whom she now saw as weak and clumsy for failing to execute the plan cleanly, was absolute. She refused to speak to him or even acknowledge his existence, ensuring they remained in separate units. Isabelle's sentence was long, but her spirit remained unbroken, though permanently twisted. Her prison memoir, dictated to a writer she contacted through a smuggled phone, was a distorted justification of her actions, painting herself as a victim of a corrupt system. She retained her ambition, continuing to scheme and manipulate, but her empire was now confined to the small, brutal world behind bars, a kingdom of concrete and stolen moments of power.